Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to demonstrate layering over grayscale. Now, layering is one of the very basic principles of working with colored pencils, and experienced artists and colorists alike are very familiar with layering. But people not as familiar with coloring grayscale pictures might be interested to see layering in action over grayscale. Now, some people teaching grayscale advocate using light, medium, and dark colors over each object. However, I find that sometimes light and bright medium tones are often all that you need. In this video, first I'll show you the difference between layering and coloring on line art versus grayscale. Then I will demonstrate step-by-step layering over a grayscale sphere, and it might surprise you how I color the shadow areas. And finally, I'll show how I layer colors on a fairy dress and face from my Fairies Grayscale Coloring book. To illustrate how different grayscale layering is, here is a line art ball or sphere and a grayscale one. Now, to achieve a realistic shading in a line art picture, you need many more layers and more dark colors. This is a flesh tone exercise I did to create a similar shaded face. I used an extra 3 colors to shade the line art on the left. I'm not saying you'll never use dark colors for grayscale, but I find I use them sparingly for occasional outlines and for deepening of shadows of darker objects. So I'm going to color a golden ball and using just 3 colors. The first one is cream, and you notice I'm putting layers. This is how you layer. I go first in one direction, parallel lines, and then another, and another. Often do 3 or 4 layers of each color. In this one, this is Spanish orange, and you'll really be able to see here the parallel lines and the technique for layering. And actually, if my pencil was even sharper, I could have had those little parallel lines even closer together. So the sharper your pencil is, and the more layers and crossed direction layers that you use, the more you will cover all those little divots in the texture of your paper. So that's what colored pencil coloring is all about, is getting into those little light areas. And in another tutorial I'll cover blending methods, which you often do need if you want a smoother look at the end. But this tutorial is more about layering. And for shadows, you notice I did go in with that light pencil with the Spanish orange right into the shadow. And now I'm going in with a mineral orange, which is pretty close to the same tone as that shadow. So now I'm using a slightly different technique, a circular technique for, this isn't burnishing, but I'm pressing down just a little harder on my layers now. And now I'm adding layers of the Spanish orange with the circular technique, so really adding some nice color into the shadow areas. And my final layer with the Spanish orange will again be that medium pressure. Again, this isn't true burnishing, but I am succeeding here in blending these colors a bit. And if you use enough layers, you don't need to press down and burnish too hard, especially for light objects. So you have to be patient to color, but I think coloring grayscale to me is a little more fun than having to render the shadows of objects. So that's basically the principle of layering over grayscale. This simple sphere is an example that shows you can layer with many fewer colors than would be needed to render a realistic ball in line art, and no dark colors at all. So I'm using the same principles here, starting with the lightest color. This is going to be a light dress, similar color to the sphere, light orangey yellow. And I'm layering with cream. And I'm going to go right over the gray areas as well, the shadow areas, just to give it a base of pigment to go over. It's always good to have many layers, and then your blending will go a lot smoother. So here's one layer, just one layer of the yellow. And as we go forward, I might be speeding up some of these layers, so it's kind of like watching paint dry. And if you're going to be coloring, it's like knitting. You have to be patient and one row at a time. I kind of think of it like knitting sometimes, where you're just doing this repetitive motion, and it can be very relaxing to color in layers like this with a very light hand. Just like you're signing your name with a pen. You know, notice how much pressure you use for that. Really very little, not a lot at all, just enough to get a bit of color on. And as you build it up, you notice it's the layers overlapping make a very even tone. And if you start too dark too soon, it just doesn't look as good. It looks a lot more uneven. So I am speeding up the video here. And I'm putting a little more of the color in the shadows, and I'm pressing a tiny bit harder in the shadows. Not much at this point, but maybe a little extra color in the shadows. And I accidentally colored her knee there, didn't mean to. That's her knee bent. Thought it was a petal. Oops. So again, this is layering. Sideways motions. Now I'm going the other way, but still that's one layer. Now I'm going up and down. So the purpose of going in different directions is that you're catching the tooth of the paper in a different way by going in different directions. And on the fairy, I decided to go a little brighter, so I'm using a yellowed orange here to make the shadows a bit brighter. I don't think I use this in the ball. I think I just use this brighter orange in the fairy. It's still not a very bright orange. I tend to like slightly more muted tones and colors. That's probably why I really like to color grayscale. You know, shadows should not be as bright as the bright side of an object. So to color her face, I am going in with cream. I don't always start like this. Sometimes I'll start with more of a flesh tone, like a pale peach, light peach. And I will be doing an upcoming demo on flesh tones, including a couple of darker flesh tones. So watch for that coming up, hopefully in the next month or so. I'm planning it out right now. So people have requested that. And so again, on coloring on grayscale is a little different, so that will be something I think people might enjoy. And for this is this light peach? No, this is beige. So beige is a bit more of a neutral flesh tone. Peach is a little pinker. Sometimes I like to use that combination. And then depending at the end which direction I want to go, you know, there are hundreds of ways you can do flesh. So for this little fairy, I want her to be a delicate, pale little fairy. The color in the shadow as well. Again, the more you build up with light layers, the smoother your end result will be. Yes, that indeed was beige. So peach. Peach is the color I love to layer over the shadows, and often I don't put much peach in the light side of someone with pretty pale flesh. I might feather it in a little bit on the edge of the shadow going into the light. But our faces, the shadows of our faces actually do have a lot of gray in it, so I feel like you know, doing flesh tones over grayscale can really give you quite a realistic look. And in most of my books, the faces are pretty small, the figures are fairly small, and it doesn't take too long to do the flesh, as compared to some books have big portraits, so you can get a nice look in a pretty short amount of time. So this is light peach. I'm going over this the little bit of a medium pressure because it's got quite a few layers already on it, and doing it, you know, a fairly flat look. Again, with such a small face, you don't need to do hyper rendering because you're pretty far away from it. It's when you're looking at it, it's small, so you're just getting a general impression, and you don't want to do too much fussy detail or try to do too much fussy detail. You know, your eye will pick up that this is a cute little fairy. So I'm just using blush pink here for her lips. If you want her lips a little brighter, grab your pink pencil, and that works great too. And for the shadow areas, I'm going in again with layers of peach to create really that almost a translucent look in the shadows. This is my favorite color combination for shadows of pale flesh, is just to use peach in the shadows and layer it with quite a few even toned light pressure layers, building it up slowly so that gray is covered evenly. And you can press a little bit harder, not burnishing exactly, but sort of a medium pressure, but only after you've built up some light layers. And just for a few finishing touches, a little bit more blush pink, softly feathered in layers on her cheeks. Now, because her face is small and her dress and face are light colors, I don't feel these areas actually needed burnishing. Medium and darker colors often need a bit more smoothing out because there's a lot of that speculation of white showing through, and they need more blending. And I am working on a blending tutorial with 6 methods for blending over grayscale, so stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to my channel and check out all my coloring tutorials and flip-throughs of my coloring books. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Bye for now.